Good morning and happy Friday, everyone. You are joining us here at the Daily AI Show on Friday, April 26th. Wow, April's flown by. And we are going to talk today about Zapier and their newly released feature called Zapier Central. It seemed very promising, the idea of integrating AI chatbot into the Zapier workflows in a way that's native, that's part of the actual UI for Zapier. There's lots of possibilities there, but I'll give you my sort of quick take on it. I see this, after having played with it for about a half an hour, I see it really as just a new UI for developing Zaps. It doesn't take the step beyond, which would make it approximate something like Respell, which allows you to, in effect, create workflows in a graphical user interface that integrate different chatbots, that different applications that you have. This just seems to be an embedded assistant where you can describe the kind of automations that you want to accomplish, and you can select those. And let me say why I think it's falling short of where they could have gone with this. Something as simple as I want a chatbot that I have an API access to. I want that to be part of a workflow. And that doesn't seem to be that simple in the new central UI. And further, I would like to have an automation that I create using the central feature. And I'll share my screen in a moment here and show you what that looks like. But I would really like to be able to do things that are possible in Make and in Respell, which is to create parallel workflows. So an action can be invoked, and you can kick off multiple actions within Zapier Central, but getting the output of a subroutine, as I would call it, which is kind of a parallel workflow, and get it to reintegrate back into the main output of that's beyond my ken when I look at this UI. So let me share my screen. Let me just first verify that I've got one up here that will look kind of familiar to me. Okay, this is what you're faced with. So let me pull this out so I can find it easily. When you go about starting with this new product. So I'm going to share my screen, and here it is. So.
No, we're not seeing it.
Okay,
there it goes. It's taking a second. I'll add it. There we go.
This is a new bot. Okay, and I can change the name of this bot right now. Oh no, that's the Notion part of it. Let me get out of there. I'm calling this Memory Bot. Now we're in the right place to start. So this is Memory Bot, and Memory Bot says, I'm looking forward to working together, learn how you can harness my abilities to create by creating my first behavior, giving me access to data. So behaviors, and then actions, and then connecting them to data sources. Behaviors looks to me to be like a method of describing in a prompt, a natural language prompt, what you want the trigger to be, what you want the action to be. And so we're gonna start out by clicking on behaviors down here. So I'm going to create a behavior. It's called untitled behavior, and I'm going to tell my bot what to do when it's triggered and how to process or summarize the data. So I have access to a single AI UI here to say, okay, when I add a new document to my Notion database, I want you to take in the content of that new item, and I want you to summarize it. So I'm adding an article to a Notion database, for example. So I want you to summarize it, and then I want you to take an action. And so I can define the trigger. So I could say add a trigger when I have a new action in Notion. I can then go and say add an action. And what I want to do is I want it to go, let's say, I want to have it send me something in Slack. All right. So I've got kind of a series of steps that I can create. Now, I could have done all of those things that we just described in the normal Zapier interface.
Right.
So doing it in this way opens up some possibilities, which is some processing that's done by the AI using natural language prompting rather than having the Zap go out to my account with ChatGPT and invoke a prompt and do that. So it reduces the step a little bit. But let's suppose that I wanted to have a series of functions applied by this particular AI that's built into this series. How do I add an action, which is once you've done this, what I want you to do is go and do another LLM-based function. So in this list here, I can search thousands of apps. And what if I said OpenAI? Okay. I could go here, and now I'm adding another action. Okay. And I can do all of these functions that are a part of Zapier.
Mhm.
Again, I go back to the point that I could have done this in Zapier originally. So it's not like it's providing me with either a graphical user interface for the creation of complex workflows, as I can get in Make or Respell. But Zapier already has that. I might have to use Zapier. I wonder if I could actually use Zapier here. So I can use the Zapier Central function to, access a bunch of different functions within Zaps. But now I'm getting confused. And instead of having a drag and drop UI that lets me do something, I have to go and learn how to chain these functions all together. So I'm a little annoyed by the complexity or the learning curve that's required here. But I do think they're a bit on the right track of simplifying the concept of adding a trigger and then adding actions. And I haven't done enough with it yet to explore whether multiple actions can be triggered simultaneously. Can you add multiple actions? So
Right.
I'm at a deficit to really totally critique this product.
Right. So Andy, I was going to give a little pushback on that, and that's probably just because I've had a little more time with it. My take is a little more optimistic on it. Very rough, will admit that. And in fact, Zapier is kind of clear in their documentation, all 7 pieces of it, that this is a public preview, right? They're saying like super beta, beta, not trying to be to PR it any more than it actually is. So I'll give them some slack for that. Now, my experience with it is it did take me a little time to understand what they were trying to do with it, and the impression I get with it is the overall approach seems to be they want to create an environment in which you're staying in for whatever your functions are, right? Whether it's data handling or data management, whether it's creating automations, things like that. It's the chatbot feature that you need to dive into, I think, for the things that you're looking for. Because I ran into the same things too. It's like, okay, behavior. What's a behavior? All right, well, that sounds like a custom GPT prompt. I created a custom GPT. That's the behavior. It's triggering an outside source. That's a action, and then it would go about its business. Luckily, Zapier has the benefit of, like, it touts over 6,000 integrations and apps that it can work with. So you have a ton of actions that can be done. You will definitely be helped along the way if you already have experience with Zapier and
Yeah,
know
for sure.
how to use it for sure. But so what I ran into was with the bot, I have to I ask the bot to do things. That's the change in my behavior that I had to make to get more out of it. I asked the bot, "Hey, I want to accomplish this goal. Do it for me," or how do you do it? And it first explained to me what I asked it what everything was. It was very good about having its own information, its own FAQ, its own, documents and stuff like that. And it was pretty good about running me through how to create a behavior and what behaviors I would have to create to accomplish whatever that goal is. So I think, Andy, for you to weave those various behaviors together is the chatbot. I need to accomplish this goal. I've already built out the components for you to accomplish the goal, and the chatbot will accomplish the goal. So it's sort of agentic in that path, but it's not doing it on its own. You're giving it all the tools it needs to accomplish one goal, and then it's figuring out what components to use to accomplish the goal.
Okay.
So that's a slightly
I get your
different
point,
approach.
and I probably would have been more successful at getting into interaction with the AI in the behavior UI there, where you can actually give it instructions. But I wanted to hook it up to one of my databases in Notion, and when I did that action to create, I wanted to create the action. It presented me with just one of my databases, and not the one that I wanted to use. I have 20 in there. And then it said, if you're not seeing the database you want, then, read these documents about connections and so on. But interestingly, unlike in the trigger where you can create a new connection, there's actually a button in there to create a new connection. In the action, there was no create a new connection. It already presented Andy Halliday's Notion. So I know it was connected to that, but it only presented one of the database. So that's a bug. That's a bug.
That definitely is a bug, because I didn't connect it to Notion. I connected it to Airtable, and once you're in the trigger interface, it is very Zapier looking, right? There's the drop down menus, you connect it to an account, and it says either have the AI figure it out or you choose it. And I will admit, for most of the things, when I knew it was a specific table I wanted to access, I just told it what table to access. I didn't allow
and I tried to do the same thing in the search box, because it provides a search box for your tables.
Yeah.
Or not tables, I should say, my databases. But it doesn't provide any result from that, right?
Okay,
So
I'm pretty sure that's
it was a little
100%
strange. It's just a bug in the connection with my Notion database, even though it seemed to have within that UI, without me having an active Zapier account, which is already connected to Notion, which would probably have solved that. But it did bring back one of my databases, so it had the connection. So anyway, a little buggy yet.
So this is sort of my take on Zapier Central. And I get, thank you, Jumi, your point about it being beta, alpha, beta. I'm not, for me, it does not seem to be well positioned to hit either target. I'm a super Zapier user, and I'm frustrated with the interface, right? Like, I don't need this. Or I'm a total newbie, and it gets me to a place, and then I'm hanging because I don't know what to do. So, like, it's a tricky spot. And again, they may be there, I don't know, there may be people who are like super into Zapier, like to becoming this thing and want to play with it. And frankly, I have the same critique for MakeSpot, and I had the same critique for
yeah.
Respell's bot,
Yeah.
but Respell took their bot away. So maybe they had their own critique for it. That if you know what you're doing, the bots feel clunky and don't like, you have to learn the code to teach them. It's natural language programming, but it's not really, right? You communicate in normal words as opposed to Boolean code kind of stuff, but you still have to know the secret words to get it to do what you want. Yeah, so that was my big thing. Like, I'm not sure who this is benefiting, and if it's beta, it's benefiting Zapier, right? Like, use
Right.
it, be frustrated, tell Zapier where you got frustrated, and that's the point of that for me anyway.
Yeah, I agree. It definitely is a middle position, but I think now I'm probably just an optimistic person by nature, but what what I hope to see its potential
Mhm.
is refining, bringing on new people, right? A
Mm.
newbie, if they've never experienced Zapier at all or don't know anything about automation, that's scary anyways, because you
Right.
got to figure out, okay, this does this and this means this, and I got to connect all this. The bot, and I think that's what the focus here is, the bot is supposed to pick up the heavy lift,
Right.
right? I just tell the bot, hey, I want to do this thing. And then it guides me through the process. It's like, okay, I need access to this. Can you create this thing? I'm like, okay, cool. Can you connect that thing? Okay, cool. And then,
Yeah.
all right, let's test it out. On a side note, I will say I do like their threads capability. So you have the main interaction with the bot, and then when you ask it to accomplish something or it's testing something or whatnot, that opens up into a new thread, and you can discuss all the context of that thread back and forth with the bot without involving yourself into the main
Nice.
window or the main thread, your initial chat box. And
Well,
so
let me
you
ask
can
a question
easily
about
go,
that,
yeah,
Junmi. So I
yeah.
didn't get that far.
Oh,
But are you saying that that window, the dialog box for the
yeah,
chat bot,
yeah.
that when you create a new thread or ask it to do an action, it's going to create another window in the UI,
Yeah, it'll
another
pop up
dialog box in the
it'll be
UI?
essentially, it'll be a sidebar where, and any message, any message that you're going back and forth with the bot, you can open up or reply in a thread. And
Do you
so,
happen to have that up and can share
yeah,
that?
sure.
Yeah,
We can,
thanks.
here,
That'd
let
be
me,
interesting because I feel bad about being a newbie, a flustered newbie with this particular product because it probably has much more capability than I ever got to experience in my 30 minutes of practice with it. So one of the things that I'm curious about is whether in the instructions you can basically have multiple steps that create multiple actions. So all you're doing with the action, connections is just setting up the connections, and then the instructions will actually guide the workflow process. So you're describing in words now rather than in iconic connected steps.
mhm.
You're describing in words the sequence of actions, and there's actually the possibility of having multi-threaded actions, right? So you have multiple things happening, or at least having a series of actions be taken in sequence.
Mm.
Mhm, mhm. And I think a combination of that would be what their instant actions are, right?
Yeah.
I don't think it's quite there yet, but the instant actions are essentially triggers that you want to run immediately, as opposed to having a webhook style, like how Zapier traditionally is, right? You set up, oh, when a new email comes in and then this X, Y, and Z happens. But the instant action is, I want this thing to happen right now. And one of the pieces that I really liked about that under the instant action is creating a new, let's see here. I'll just create a new one here. And and then I can look at the different actions here. I can have this send off, and well, I don't want to go into behaviors yet, but I can have that happen right then and there, right? As opposed to just waiting for the trigger to happen. Now, to go back a little bit, this here you'll see on the screen is the thread that I was talking about, where I was talking to the test bot about, oh, I guess that's not the best way to select it, about running this behavior. And I set the trigger.
Why in your thread are you named Beth Lyons?
Because it's my Zapier account.
I'm using Beth's account to test. So again, thank you, Beth, for allowing me to use that. But
the Daily AI Show uses my Zapier account.
Yeah. So so the thread basically breaks out to what we're working on at the time, right? It's you usually has to deal with whatever behavior I'm triggering, or instant action, or anything like that. And then you can use the back and forth communication in the thread. So this happens to organize a little better. I can always go back to that part of the conversation to continue the conversation about specifically that thread, or I can continue on and do additional testing and things like that, and then go back and forth without having to, if you're used to ChatGPT, having to like go back to scroll all the way up to the conversation, quote that conversation in your next request or response, and going, back and forth that way.
So, okay, so that's a nice feature. I like that. Yeah. It basically allows a condensed view of the dialogue that you had with the chat, and you can open up, a longer exchange on a certain thread over on the right-hand side. So your experience, Junmi, was that using the chat, the test bot chat here, was a way of having an assistant design and advise you on the necessary behaviors to be defined and data sources to be defined by a separate action outside of that chat. And so you found it very helpful.
Yes, I did. Overall, I could see its potential. There's definitely some gaps that they're working towards. But I think the methodology or the thinking behind it is you create all of the things that you want to accomplish within this single environment or this interface. Here's all your behaviors that you can create for your bot. Here's these instant actions, and here's all of the data sources that you work with. So it's kind of creating a productivity suite or a productivity environment to just live in, because you have all of your data that you need to bring into wherever into Central. I guess that's why I named it, right? So and then you can manipulate it. But I think the key thing is the automation, the ease of use, and the assistant factor is the bot.
So here's why I flubbed this. The reason is that you wisely went into dialogue with the bot itself first. Me knowing what a trigger was and knowing what a behavior was, having read the documentation, I went immediately to create behaviors. I didn't use the UI with the bot at all. So then I got lost just trying to work with the UI that's spare there without any guidance from the assistant. Now I'm going to go back and do it again and try the other way around, which is the wise way, which is let the AI assistant that's in that chatbot interface there help you walk through the creation of your behaviors, your connections to actions, and so on.
Yeah.
Mhm.
The
Mhm.
other thing that is helpful, or I think is a potential other use case, is if you are someone who's built a custom GPT and then got to the actions section or the schema kind of stuff, and but your head blew a little bit, and then it works part of the time, but it doesn't. So on that Chat GPT side, this is actually bringing the ChatGPT behavior into the action house, right? So your
Mhm.
actions are very likely to be more successful in the Zapier environment because that's actually where they're happening, right? So that
Right.
connection doesn't need to be that connection between OpenAI's stuff and this doesn't need to be as robust.
Mhm.
And then what you're able to do is have that conversation with ChatGPT. Um,
Yeah, I agree. It's a little daunting for someone who doesn't have experience in how to build those and how those connect, and then give the average person like, oh, give me the API JSON that I need so
right.
that it'll connect to the Zapier API. What are you talking about, right? So I totally agree. This is definitely for the people who know what they want and know what their the databases are, what their sources are, and may have used Zapier in the past. But I think the chatbot's real strength will be um, for new users. Like,
Mm,
I don't know anything. Teach me what to do. I want to just try to get this email into this spreadsheet. How do I do that? And it'll go through that process. Now, I don't know what's underneath the hood for Zapier, but I got a very Chat GPT response experience, formatting certain kind of language, less hyperbolic, but definitely, along those lines. So maybe they're using that LLM as the basis, and they've done a pretty good job of um, integrating their canned responses. So when I ask about certain kinds of things, I'll get pretty close to the same answer, as opposed to just wildly different points of view or whatnot. The the only big gripe I have, and I'll give them a little leeway on this, is it's blank. Like the UI, like when you just go to Zapier Central and it's just like, okay, create a bot. It's got 2 or 3 paragraphs, and that's all. There's no flowing UX that helps you get to here. This is the next step that you need to do or whatnot. It's new bot, boom. And it's like, let me help you today. How? I mean, sure, maybe that's what they want. They want you to go, how can you help me today?
Yeah.
And just go on that level. But when I didn't get I didn't get the web experience, that UX experience that I was looking for. I didn't see those trained visual triggers that I was looking for, or anything like that. But again, public preview, I'll give them some slack on that.
Good. So I have a question for you. As experienced Zapier users, both of you, um, now that you've got a taste of what Central does, would that cause you to use Central in preference to your already proficient use of Zapier?
That's a good question. That's a really good question. And I hate to answer yes and no, but where it is right now, no, because uh, if I know what I'm doing, if I know what I want to do specifically, then I'll just go into Zapier. I'll just create a Zap ABC, done. If I'm trying to figure out how to do it, I think the bot provides some value there. Like,
Mhm.
I'm not sure how I'm going to get this information from point A to point Z. Let me talk to the bot, and maybe it can trigger some knowledge that I have, like, oh, maybe this is the application that I need to connect, or this is the service I need to connect. And I think that's where if they really build that into the bot, that'll be the truly valuable part. Is so my experience with Make, Zapier, and all of these automation tools is they do have a fairly high learning curve, because you need to know what all the components and how they've labeled things and ID'd things, all of that means, right? This bot has the potential to guide you through that process. So if you don't know what any of that stuff means, it can teach you essentially what everything's about. Like, okay, so I need to have this call for this webhook, and if you don't know what that is, the bot has the potential to teach you, okay, well, this is the webhook, and this is how it functions, and these are the applications that use this webhook, and all those kinds of things. And I think that's where the true value is going to be.
It may be the
let me just talk to it, and then it can tell me how to do everything.
That sounds perfect for me, because I have always been frustrated with Zapier, not so much about lack of understanding of sequencing a number of steps, but how fragile the setup of each step is. And that was my experience with this today again, which was, I just wanted to find my one page, my one database in Notion, and I couldn't get it. Well, I'm going to go back and ask the bot, why can't I do that? You're showing me one of them, but there's nothing else in the dropdown. I don't want that. Does that mean that was the page that was open, or that was the database that was open on my Notion when you went to it, and that's all I got back?
Yeah.
So
I'm pretty sure it was a bug, Andy,
okay,
or it could just be that integration with Notion. I mean, it's one of the ones they featured, so I'm kind of leaning towards the bug side. Now, did you have a chance to add it as a data source? Because that would help as well, because the data sources, and I know we didn't really have time to talk about it too much, but it does offer live syncing to those data sources. So that information will be more readily available to you than trying to trigger a hook or a call to whatever API or anything like that.
So that's cool. I think for me, and I know we need to wrap up, I am a little frustrated with companies moving toward this kind of feature as opposed to having a really robust, effective chatbot with your help documentation, right? So like I want this conversation just with your help documentation, right? Like, cool. Let's go back and forth about what I want to do, what I might want to do. I'm not ready for you to build it for me because I'm in an ideation place.
Right.
And that in all of these things, I find is seems to be like I don't know why I realize I talk about this all the time. I don't know why companies are not like, this is super low hanging fruit to make your people really, really happy.
Well, Beth, they have to build the documentation first before you can.
Yes, that's true.
And I know, hey, I come from the software side. I get it. Nobody likes documentation. None of the programmers like documentation. None of the devs. Nobody wants to do it. But
it's a key part of the user experience.
Really want to have access to it,
There's AI that will build your documentation for you. Like, have people go through and like find call us. We can totally help you strategize out of this.
Okay, so to wrap the show, let me say Zapier is a leader in this area of importance in the world of AI, which is automations and building automations and chaining automations. And there's only several that are really at the vanguard of this kind of functionality, and Zapier is way up there. So if you've not used Zapier before and you had never done an automation, this is a great efficiency hack for your life. And now it appears that if unlike me, you don't try to go and articulate the behaviors and the actions right away, but instead talk to the bot about it. You can get these things working for you in Zapier, and it's free to try. So I encourage everybody to go try Zapier Central. Just search Zapier Central and you'll end up on one of the pages there, and it'll say free, try it now, and click on that and then start talking to the chatbot. Don't walk by the greeter. That's my lesson for today. So thanks for joining us today. This was an interesting conversation and I learned a lot. Thank you very much, Junmi and Beth. Come join us again next week. We have a whole row of shows coming up for you. And we'll tell you on Monday what the layout for that is.
We'll let you know when we do.
All right. Thanks, everyone. Have a great weekend.
Aloha.